Did you feel the depth of silence in the last couple of rounds? Very powerful. There's a question that comes up sometimes in Zen. How do you proceed from the top of a 50-foot pole, or maybe it's a 100-foot pole? And the meaning of this essentially is, maybe the deepest meaning is, how do we proceed into the world after liberation from suffering and from illusions, the fundamental illusions, the separate self being the container for those illusions. How do we proceed in life from there? But it also has other meanings, of course. How do we proceed into the world after a retreat? How do we take what we've cultivated here beyond the walls of this retreat center, beyond the boundaries of this area, beyond the borders of this land as we travel out throughout the world, back home and so forth? And the answer is simple. The part of the answer is the deep silence that we all shared in these last couple of rounds. Don't forget it's here. We've cultivated that deep, profound group samadhi. And it is always here in one real sense. At the same time, in the relative, we are all going to carry this out. And just know it's there. You sit for 5 minutes, sit for 10 minutes, sit for a half an hour, it'll be there. You'll drop in deep. And that lasts quite a while after retreat, certainly for at least a handful of days or a couple of weeks. You have very ready access to that. And the reason I say this is because we often overlook that. Some part of us sometimes is like, the retreat was nice and the silence, but I really want to get back to my life and do the things I need to do. And we can really get our minds revved up, and not just our minds, our bodies, and we can get busy doing a lot and really overlook the fact that we have cultivated that and that it's very accessible. So I encourage everyone to sit as much as possible for the next week or two. Don't get too involved in unnecessary activities, unnecessary additions to what you're already doing. And if you can, just put a little more time aside to sit or lay. Stay with your practice. Let the silence do its work, which is work that we are not directly aware of much of the time, but it is profoundly transformative nonetheless. So give yourself that gift. Give your family that gift. Give the world that gift. Trust that the work is being done, even when you aren't managing it and you don't really know what's happening. And then part of it is when we do engage in the practical responsibilities of life with our coworkers, our loved ones, our friends, or people we're not acquainted with that we come into contact with, also with animals, with the environment, with our senses and with our emotions. Be mindful of your overarching approach in those times, in those spaces, in those moments. And I think it's helpful to keep it simple there as well, because the mind multiplies complexity very quickly, but it doesn't have to. We can use sort of guiding principles or guiding intonations in ourself. And I'll give a few, but you resonate with whatever resonates with you and carry that into these interactions. Simple ones are staying in the senses. If you're talking to someone, do you have to have that dialogue going in the back of the mind? Do you have to pay attention to what you're going to say next and what this means and who this person is? Or can you actually lean in just a bit and just notice the shades of color in the face, the movement of their body, the sounds? So lean into the senses a bit when we're interacting. That's a simple guiding principle or orientation that you can adopt if it's helpful to you. Another one is openness. Instead of feeling, and you maybe pick just one of these or pick a couple of them, but carrying these into the interactions can be very valuable and transformative. Openness here means I'm not reaching out into the world trying to affect it. I'm not reaching out into the world trying to push and pull and get more and less and try to correct all the things I see wrong with everything all the time, right? So I'm not out here doing that. Rather, I'm just open to anything that comes in and moves out, and I don't manage it or navigate it or even really comment on it. Just let the experiences come and go in microcosmic ways, in the moment-to-moment flow of a conversation or a movement practice or an experience of emotion. And in larger scale, just let the day naturally reveal itself. The seasons, the diurnal cycles, the solar cycles, all these cycles are already there. We can just open to that and allow the natural synchronicity of everything, let it in. Let it sort of reattune us to the relative through the silence that we've cultivated. So openness. We can remind ourselves as we come into interactions. And interactions with people are often the most, triggering, the most likely to put us in our head for various reasons that we don't need to go into in this talk, but just be aware that sometimes interacting with someone is a good time to just remind yourself of that one orientation that you want to practice or carry into your life. Openness or leaning into the senses. Another would be love. Love may sound too lofty. Maybe it's just acceptance. Warmth. And this is a simple one. Feel the warmth in your heart, in your own chest, in your own body, for anything. Sometimes if you just intone warmth, it'll be there, or love, it'll be there. Notice it. Notice it holds you. You don't have to hold it. Notice it holds everything. It holds all experience. And then just to the degree you can, just offer it to who or whatever is right in front of you. Just feel that. And notice it's not just here, it's there and there and there and there. And even in some kind of intense emotion that might arise, something that's been troublesome for us, an addiction maybe. Anything that arises, can I also sort of find it there? So that intonation or that orientation would be metta or love. Maybe my personal favorite, I don't know if I have a favorite, but spontaneity. Equanimity, deep equanimity, thoroughly realized equanimity is spontaneity. That's how it feels. Like you really don't care how anything goes anymore because you're just loving the mystery of it. You're loving the movement and the stillness and not even getting 1 second ahead of reality, not getting ahead of anything, not trying to anticipate anything, just experiencing it as it flows, as it comes, as it goes. Just take delight in the complete unknowability of this moment. And then it's simple, you just do your best. You may not respond the perfect way or something, but you don't have to second guess that when you're just seamless with it. My Zen teacher used to make these analogies like a phonograph needle on a record. You know how the old records work, the old albums, they had little grooves, and the grooves are literally vibrating the needle that gets amplified into the speaker, basically. But it's those little vibrations that the needle follows them so perfectly that you get high fidelity. You get such a clear reproduction that it's not even a reproduction. It's like the needle and that groove are really one movement, one vibration together. That's how you can be with life, such that it's like, I can't wait to see what happens next because Because why not? How much suffering has anticipation caused you? How much suffering has hesitation caused you? And has it ever actually helped you one time? That's arguable. It probably hasn't, but it certainly causes a lot of suffering. So what if we don't hesitate? This is very simple and binary, actually. You could almost call it like the 10th fetter in some models of fetter descriptions. Why not just delight in whatever is going to happen next? And not try to get your dirty little fingers into it. Try to control it. Like, why? You're not controlling it. You never have been. I thought of this analogy many years ago, and I haven't. It just came to me now. I don't know if I've repeated it for a long time, but it's kind of like, if you're a foodie and you love gourmet food or cooking or something, and you're traveling to, I don't know, France, and there's a Michelin 3-star restaurant with a world-renowned chef, and you have your reservation, and you have your date with you, and you're just excited, and you've planned a night out, and you go and you're feeling great. You're like, luckily after traveling, you're not sick, you're not jet lagged, you just feel great, and you're excited to come and have this wonderful meal, right? Because it's so important to you. And you sit down and you look at the menu, and you get up and you go into the kitchen and you start like trying to make it yourself, right? You're like, the cook's like, what the hell are you doing? The chef's like, what are you doing in here? And you're like, no, here, put some more salt in here. Here, I brought my box of macaroni and cheese. Let's put that in there. And they're like, who's this psychopath in our kitchen, right? It's like, just enjoy the meal. You don't have to mess with it. You don't have to mess with life. I mean, it's a simple analogy, but it's really like that. Like, don't try to be the chef. Paul Hederman has he said this once to me personally. I don't know if he says it on his videos or whatever, he probably does, but he said, it's really just like when you're going in for surgery, like you have 2 jobs. Don't move and don't try to be the surgeon. That's pretty simple, right? Don't move. Cultivate stillness and don't try to be the surgeon. That's equanimity. Don't judge, push, pull, struggle. Because the only thing struggle does is causes you to feel like you're struggling. Really doesn't do much else. And it may feel other people around you sort of empathize and they feel struggle too. But other than that, it's just struggle for struggle's sake, Spontaneity. Excuse me, spontaneity is the opposite of that. It's just delighting in whatever's happening. Because why not? The alternative is complex. The alternative is heady. The alternative is dualistic. The alternative is exhausting. So just see that. And things get very simple and kind of funny sometimes. Funny a lot. It's very delightful. It's much more comedic experience to see that life doesn't have to be anything in particular. If we don't call it anything, it's just what it is. And it's just fascinating and deep and surprising and sometimes heartbreaking. But one thing for sure is that there's nothing solid. There's nothing that stays, nothing that holds, nothing that solidifies. Very kaleidoscopic. So as I said in one of the talks earlier this week, key ingredient to this kind of equanimity is I'll start by saying the willingness to let go, and that's how you start. You start by trying to investigate will and willingness and all that. But ultimately it comes down to seeing that there is no way for anything to hold on. That's why non-dual type of realization becomes important, because if you experience the world in a dualistic way, sooner or later you'll start grasping again. But once the non-dual insight dawns, it doesn't necessarily immediately end grasping. There can be a lot of psychological factors, traumas, habit, stubbornness. There can be a lot there. But it opens up a massive opportunity to stop grasping and to see it's worthless. It's worthless. It doesn't do anything. And endless letting go is not only available, it's intelligent. Makes you available. It doesn't make you unavailable, it makes you available. We fear with our close relationships and intimate things we adore, things we love. We fear that if I let go all the time, or if I just notice this, and we all know this, we all know at some level, this is all dust. It's all, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Everybody in this room, everything you've ever learned, known, collected, experienced is going to be dust in a very short time. We all know this. Everyone knows that, but we run around trying to avoid it constantly. But when you see it, it's like, oh, yeah. And that can be completely okay when we don't run from it. When we run from it, we get complex minds and all this. We don't run from it, then we get equanimity. But as I said, that if there's a fear, there's a pretty sticky fear in there that, like, if I don't let go, if I don't hold on, that I'm not honoring that which I love. It's not like that, actually. When you finally learn to let go, then you actually see clearly the object of love. And then it's not an object. You can actually experience another fully without your agenda. Vivekananda, in a book I read many years ago, said, personal love is selfish love. And I thought, man, that's a very incisive statement. It's a brutal statement in a way. There's part of me that didn't want to hear that, didn't want to accept it, but I also knew it was true. And at some point, it just became really obvious that that's exactly right. Indiscriminate love is love. Discriminate love is something that has some love in there, but it's a mixture of that and control and selfishness. And it really comes down to just grasping. If we can get so close to the mechanism of grasping, which is a mental, we're not actually grasping, it's a mental process. When we get close enough to the mechanism that it starts to subside, then we really start to feel that equanimity. We feel the release. Let life be life. I think Byron Katie, I heard her say maybe somewhere, don't get up in God's business. What happens is God's business, not yours, if we're going to use that kind of, phraseology. But why get up in God's business? Just why believe you control so much more than you really do? And actually, we don't control. We sort of cohabitate energetically, something like that. And when that's seen and felt through surrender and through non-grasping, then you actually feel a different kind of influence. But it's a collective influence. It's a particular and collective interwoven influence. And it's an influence of surrender. The more control we think we have, the less control we really have, truly. And again, grasping obscures that simple fact. Grasping doesn't make control happen. It's just a reaction to the deep belief we have in control. When we see through that, then the grasping is unnecessary. But by actively grasping, we obscure the simple truth that when you think you're in control, you're actually not. And the more you feel like really insistent on control, often, I would say usually, the more unconscious your behaviors are becoming. And in another way of describing it, the only barrier to letting go of control and grasping, the only seeming barrier, is fear of sensation. That's it. Fear of emotion. Fear of some pretty wild, energies that will move through the body. So what? You have all kinds of modalities now. You have intuitive movement as facilitated by Chad. Yeah, there's a lot of energy can move that way. You have endless pointings about how to do emotion work and relational work and inquiry. There's all kinds of tools But ultimately, it just comes down to seeing through those beliefs that I can't handle this. It's too much for me. I need to do something about it. You can handle it, or your body mind can handle it. You don't need to do anything about it. And it's already happening. It's already here. So once we really digest that and we're just realizing like we actually have a lot of capacity for energetics, for sensation and emotion, then there's no need to grasp or control.